Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Coyote Clockwork. I could really stand to be more enthusiastic. Welcome back to the Ultimate Horse tutorial. We're going to talk about the forelegs today. I wanted to do forelegs and hind legs separate from each other because they function differently. They have different reasons for existing, different reasons for functioning. I just wanted to be able to talk individually about the front leg. The most important thing you need to know about the front leg of a horse is that it's weight-bearing. Horses can lock their knees and sleep standing up, so they do have a mechanism, biologically speaking, that allows them to counterbalance their weight. Horses break kind of this evolutionary rule that if you are fast and if you are agile, then you also have to be light. Horses are pretty heavy. 900 pounds is considered the lighter spectrum of a horse. So because horses are heavy, a lot of their movement is about counterbalancing that weight back and forth. As a result, horses have very precise way of moving, a very rhythmic way of moving. There are a lot of rules to the way that horses move because their bodies are so heavy that they've developed these gaits to either maximize their ability to walk or maximize their ability to sprint away from predators. The big thing about forelegs is that they are shock impact. When the hoof hits the ground, that's the first impact, and then all of the energy passes up into the pastern or the cannon. The little round areas behind the hoof is a lot of fat and a lot of tendon so that it can shock absorb. And then the rest goes up through the leg and minimizes impacts so the animal can keep moving. If there's too much impact, you will break a leg or the animal will stumble. So this is important stuff to know about why the leg works the way that it does. And once you have that, it's a lot easier to look at the anatomy and what's good about a leg and what's bad about a leg in terms of your drawing. The best thing about legs is that straight lines will be your best friend. When you're drawing horse legs, you can't go wrong with a straight line. A straight line is extremely important to conformation, for the proper placement of anatomy, just straight lines everywhere. I tend to draw very blobby, like when I'm sketching. I draw very blobby, strong, exaggerated legs, because when you go back and start to really refine them through like your anatomy and reference, they get very straight and very subtle. A picture of a horse leg is a lot less dramatic than my sketches, because I think it is about, getting gesture and getting power in that gesture first, and then keeping it as you refine it. So I'm just drawing over the basic bone anatomy here. There's really not, the only bone you really need to know about is the cannon bone, which is the lower bone below the knee. Cannon bones really define breeds, they define conformation. You really want to make sure that the horse's hooves are at the correct angle and that the animal looks balanced. Like this actual reference, like the bone is tilted, and you can see that my leg ends up wonky because of it. Like my leg is like the horse is leaning forward and it looks wrong, instead of like, remember, these animals lock their feet and sleep, so it's about their feet being directly under them. Anytime a horse shifts, its weight, like when you ask the animal to move, the weight is shifting to the haunches, because they're pushing their weight off of their forelegs and back into their haunches in preparation for moving. And moving is a lot about the neck counterbalancing the body while the body is in motion. So I fixed this. I did a corrective drawing because it was like, this is an animal that needs its feet under it and under its shoulder. Like even this sketch is the animal's a little too far forward, in my opinion. You want the legs to be well under the animal. If the horse has to stand like with its legs too far back, like it starts breaking that straight line rule, there's something wrong with the animal's conformation. So you don't want to draw on diagonals. You don't want to draw the horse leaning forward. Now I'm starting to get into common mistakes people make when they're drawing the leg, and this is over the knee. The knee is not, like, you can drop a straight line from the pit of the horse's leg or the side view of the horse's leg and cut it perfectly in half, and that is ideal. That's what you want. And this is like, the knee is not perfectly cut down the middle. It's too far to the left. And in real life conformation, that's called over the knee. You want to avoid that. And then the opposite, behind the knee. That the knee of the animal is too far back. You're not getting that perfect down the middle cut. And this is really important when you're drawing horses, especially their legs. If you are off at all, the leg looks wrong, and wrong legs on a horse bother people. Like, horses have grace, they have elegance, and if you're doing their anatomy right, they look majestic.
Are you new here?
Yeah.
No one accused horses of ever being smart, but they are majestic. Don't draw over or behind the knee. Just draw perfectly straight down. And thank me later. So that's the side view of the leg, if you are drawing the side leg. And now we're going to get into if you are drawing from the front. We'll get to 3/4 in a minute, but this is drawing from the front. A horse's legs appear much thinner from the front. You're dealing with the same shapes, they're just a little thinner, because you still want to do like a square or a circle for the knee. The knee being a square in the middle of the leg is extremely important to note. And if you can draw that square in 3D, then you're pretty much home free. You're set for life. The same rule. You see the like red line that forms the square of the chest? You can take that and drop a straight line right down the middle of the leg. And that is the ideal way to draw a horse leg. You want everything to be perfectly in half and have just a perfect half line through it. There are certain ways that horses stand and can be illustrated standing incorrectly. There's your straight line, see? That you want to try and just drop a straight line through everything as much as possible. And then you have to pay attention to your knees again, because just like a side view you can do over the knee, under the knee, for a front view you can do the same problem. It's called being knock-kneed, that the horse's knees go in too far. I'm just moving stuff to illustrate, like, this is how to mess up your drawing. So just keep that straight line straight down the middle. Otherwise, if you don't, your knees will migrate, and then you'll end up with a knock-kneed animal. And this is true in real life. It is possible to have a knock-kneed horse. They're probably not this exaggerated, but if a horse is old, if a horse is injured, they can have really messed up legs. It's a crying shame, but if you ever want to see how America devours its racetrack horses every week, I encourage you to check out the film Ruffian. Feel-good story of the week, just like Barbaro. It's also possible to have a horse that is pigeon-toed, that their bottom half, the pastern, turns inward. It causes a lot of foot problems, it causes a lot of pain for the horse. The horse is probably not safe to ride because it'll trip. It's not impossible to have a horse with knock knees that's still good. Seabiscuit, the racehorse, had a very janky front leg, and apparently it didn't stop him from running like crazy. A lot of horses will have these flaws, and I also want to emphasize that if you're trying to give your horse some character, it's okay to give them knock knees or pigeon-toed, because real-life horses have this. It's very common to see it, and it's not like a death sentence or anything. So now we're getting into movement. Horses have a lot of bones in their knees. It allows them a lot of flexibility. Again, it's a part of the shock absorption. The most important thing to remember about the knee is that the front is square, always. You will always have to mark that little square-shaped knee in some capacity on the horse. The back of the knee is not always square. When the animal is standing, it's square, but then when the animal starts to gallop, you'll see a triangle form. The back of the knee becomes a point. When the leg is up, you always need to pay attention to kind of like the arrow and the square, because the knee, when the horse is standing, the back of the knee is actually a point. It becomes the inverse of that when the horse is running. The back of the knee becomes a point, and that's really important to note. You always want to make sure that the front elbow is very triangular, and the back of the knee has a point. When the animal is in motion, you need to know that, because if you're drawing them with like really round knees, that all of their knees are like little spheres instead of the actual like anatomy, like all of these little bones are like the bones in your wrist. They have a lot of flexion in them. So if you want, you could break the square of the knee up into 2 strokes that represents the joints. And those are the things that are flexing and bending when the horse bends his leg. So a lot of times you'll see me draw kind of an exaggerated kneecap where it's like 2 strokes that are kind of in a straight line because they represent the straightness of those knees. So, okay, Coyote, you say, what about drawing the little bits at the end? We can just ignore that, right? I mean, kind of. There's not a lot of specific rules to drawing hooves. These are 3 different breeds. The top is a Morgan, the middle is an Andalusian, and the bottom is a Thoroughbred. The Morgan has kind of this little foot. It's kind of cup-shaped. It almost looks like it was carved like for a show ring. The animal is able to walk on like really soft ground, and his hooves are able to look smaller, and maybe that makes him look better in the show ring. And then the Andalusian is very much longer toe, much longer heel. This is an animal that probably wears shoes and probably works on hard surfaces like asphalt. And then the bottom, you can see the Thoroughbred just has this massive pastern that for shock absorption, because, you know, these are animals that reach 45 miles an hour weighing 1,500 pounds. The physics of that is a lot. So when you are drawing hooves, try to avoid these very common mistakes. One is making the ligaments between the hoof and the pastern way too long. This is important to have right in terms of your angle, like whatever reference you are using for your horse, really capture that angle. Straight lines are your friends when you're drawing horses, so just do straight lines. Make sure that the angle is correct, because if the hoof is like 2 under the pastern, that's a conformation problem. It also means the horse is walking on its tiptoes, and that can cause pain, problems for the horse. You don't want your horse to look janky, so don't draw that pastern too long, and don't draw it at the wrong angle. Pay attention to the angles on your hooves, because it's really important. Now, another mistake in drawing the Andalusian hoof here. The toe would be too long. This animal needs a trim. It's maybe 6 weeks worth of growth. This is one with the opposite problem, that like the hoof is way too small. If it's shaved down so the animal looks unnatural. Again, that's pretty close to the show ring horse. So pay attention to what terrain your horse is on. This is just kind of an ugly hoof, you know? There's just no elegant lines here, and nobody would like that on a horse. It's just too long. Basically, again, we're drawing the Thoroughbred here with too long of a hoof. Animals that are, you know, neglected and haven't seen a blacksmith in a while, horses' hooves never stop growing. They're like beaver's teeth. So they need to be trimmed. And if they aren't, the animal will start to have problems. And the saying is, no foot, no horse. Because if anything goes wrong with the hoof, your horse is not standing and walking anymore. Cracked hooves are valid. A lot of like Mustangs, wild horses, horses that basically wear away the hoof by being active wild animals, they can still have cracks in their hooves and still be okay. And your toe can also still be long, and the animal will still be okay. None of this is hard and fast. And again, something to think about or examine if you're trying to give your horse some character. You know, maybe they are wild, maybe their hooves are cracked, or maybe they're dainty little showmen and they have like this perfect little triangle hoof for the show ring. So think about it. You can add character to a horse by paying attention to whether they're knock-kneed or need a trim. When I said horses have a very specific and predictable way of moving, I meant it. There is a rule called the 90-degree rule. Horses' legs will never, ever, ever be more than 90 degrees away from each other, even if the animal is in full extended flight like this pose here. So here you can see me, I'm drawing the right angle, I'm turning it, and I'm putting it in the center of gravity, where the horse's balance is. And wherever the horse's balance is, his legs are never further than 90 degrees. So it's just kind of a rule of thumb to make your horse look collected and natural when you are drawing, and some landmarks to consider, because the horse's legs will never be more than 90 degrees away from each other. But Coyote, you say, I've seen horses that have legs that are further away than that. Yes, there are two rules that break the 90-degree rule. One of them is high action in the foreleg. If the horse is striking out, if the horse is doing the Spanish walk, these break the 90-degree rule. High action in the foreleg is a valid reason to have a horse break the 90-degree rule. The other rule is unnatural behavior, that you're not drawing the horse behaving itself, that the horse is rearing up, leaping away, striking, behavior that you don't want from a horse. Negative behavior will absolutely break the 90-degree rule. So that about wraps it up for the tutorial. I hope you learned at least one thing that you can walk away with. Script Snipe!